Come on.
Terry said he's been filming for the last 15 minutes.
Okay.
Alrighty, all right. Hey, everybody. I guess I'll try to stand in front of the camera. It's Friday the 13th, and welcome to the October meeting of the Madison Astronomical Society. It's great to see so many people here. In spite of, I know more than one of us have made last minute or not so last minute travel plans to go see the eclipse tomorrow. So for those of us who aren't here, I hope you have good luck with the weather tomorrow. Just to get started with our routine announcements, we've got a week from tonight, Moon over Monona Terrace coming up, and this is one of the. This has got to be one of the area's biggest star parties. In the past, we've literally had 1,000 guests show up and view the night sky with us.
I think the record was 2,000.
Maybe your record, yeah. I've heard something like that. And so it can be a crazy popular and crazy fun event. As of right now, I'm still looking for a couple more people that can help out. Namely, if we need a couple more bodies, a couple more volunteers to sit at the information table and maybe hand out flyers and answer questions about the club. We are also want to help someone to wander around to help direct guests to telescopes with specific objects on them, and I'll be putting together a list of for all the volunteers of who's going to be viewing what to the best of my ability. Yes, Rick?
I'll have a duck on mine.
Oh, a duck?
A duck on my telescope. Yes, that'll be the object on my telescope.
It'll be a
You
duck.
can direct people to us.
All right. Things like that help. So, if you're interested in helping out, please send me an email or chat with me and give me your email address, and we'll get that all worked out. I think we're going to be pretty well set for telescopes, although there are a couple of people who are either writing a proposal at the last minute that day, or another person might be traveling, so we'll keep our fingers crossed, but we should be in pretty good shape. So, any questions about Moon over Monona Terrace? Except I probably should preemptively answer a question. For those of us who have volunteered, I will be sending everyone loading and arrival instructions a couple of days, midweek. Not Thursday will be too late, but I'm guessing by Tuesday or Wednesday I should be emailing the instructions to everyone, including spots where each person with each telescope can go. Yes, Frank?
Do you think anybody's telescope might be pointed towards the Andromeda Galaxy, since it's kind of like pretty high up there? Great. So you got a nice wide field? Yeah.
Two telescopes.
Two telescopes,
all right, yeah.
Okay. Because I'm going to talk about it a little bit. Okay, great.
So, all right, so, I might as well jot that down. Rick, was going to be your friends who's going to do Andromeda? Nice to meet you. Say again? Stan. I can't remember. I'm sorry. I cannot remember people's names quickly enough, even my best friends. So, all right, Stan.
You know who you are.
Andromeda. I'm Lawrence. Thanks for reminding me. All right. So that's any more questions about Moon over Monona Terrace? Yeah, that'll be coming up a week from tonight at 7 o'clock. They start letting in guests at 7 o'clock, and it runs until 9:30. I anticipate making a weather call no later. The official weather call time is 4 o'clock, but I want to make it earlier than that because I know as early as possible, because I know it takes time for people to load up their equipment. So don't forget, I'll be sending out load-in instructions later this week. All right. Coming up tomorrow, weather permitting, we have a scheduled monthly star party at Yana Research Station. I was almost kind of hoping it would be clear skies during the eclipse tomorrow. If anyone wanted to bring out a solar telescope and view the eclipse, but it's looking like the forecast looks like a bummer. But maybe we'll still get lucky for tomorrow night. So all members of the club are invited to join us out at Yana Research Station starting at 6 o'clock. just to give us a little bit of daylight left to set things up. Also, we have going on our Madison Astronomical Society membership renewal drive. Jürgen, do you want to say anything about that?
Yes.
I'll bring the microphone to you. And it's in my back pocket to show you.
I sent out the renewal notices almost a month ago, and so far about 2/3 of the members have responded, but there's one third of the members are dead. I'm sorry,
Wait.
and so if you could send in your renewals, that would help a lot. Second, I do want to say that I have, at Moon over Monona Terrace, I usually just volunteered to be a wanderer. And it's fun. It is. So if you are curious about what it's like and feel like doing it, do it. It's a good experience. You end up meeting a lot of people.
Yeah.
And seeing a lot of kids. So it can be a lot of fun. So.
Thanks, Jürgen. Yeah, it's a lot of fun piquing the interest of a youngster about astronomy and science for the first time. So be there or be square. All right, for next month's meeting, we're going to be meeting here again on Friday, November 10th. And at the monthly meeting, we'll be featuring a talk by Wisconsin author and astronomy educator, Kelly Kaiser-Witt. Kelly has been a science writer specializing in astronomy for over 2 decades. She began her career at Astronomy Magazine and has regularly contributed to Astronomy Today and the Sierra Club, among other outlets. Her children's picture book, Solar System Forecast, was published in 2012. She has also written a young adult dystopian novel entitled A Different Sky. So that's coming up, sounds like a very fascinating presenter on Friday, November 10th. Any questions? And then the new moon will be kind of lining up for Saturday, November 11th. So we'll try to have another star party at Yana Research Station then. And going the way the weather normally goes and maybe the snow, it might be the last one that we do for this year. We'll see. Keep posted. Speaking of Yana Research Station, just a reminder that yes, the construction at Yana Research Station is complete. I have seen pictures of grass growing. I'm not sure, I haven't had a chance to get down there.
I have seen it.
Have you seen, I don't know how the ground, what are the ground, Wayne, do you know what the grounds are like, you know, like this week or how recently?
Not, it was last week. It was last week. The grass was just starting to come up out of the netting, but it was there. It was growing.
Yeah, so hopefully the grounds get to be more navigation friendly, because yeah, they can be soft and your ground can be soft and you could, you know, it'd be easy to form ruts and things there. So yeah, just a reminder, the matting, when I was there for the gathering in September, it was easy to trip on the mulch matting. So watch out for that. It can be fragile, and we also, you know, if you have wheeled carts or things like that, we want to avoid using those things just to avoid adding ruts and things. So keep that in mind. And also, if you're there for the first time, you might just want to go there in the daylight before the sun sets and just kind of get an idea of how things are set up, because it's kind of new and kind of different. There's some areas closer to the clubhouse, some areas that have been roped off, I believe, around there to avoid you know, accidentally driving or in an area where you shouldn't drive. I did notice that sometimes I used to park my car closer to the clubhouse. Now, if I parked in that spot next to the clubhouse and backed out towards where the pads are, I might, if I did that now, there's a larger area with unistrut electrical outlets poking out of the ground where they used to not be there. So it might be easy to inadvertently run something like that over. So if you're there the first time, just see how things are laid out and just to avoid any accidents.
We do have reflecting poles around the area. We do have reflecting poles around the area where the matting is, so people will see that even in the dark if there are any lights on it.
Great, that's great news. Thanks, Kevin. All right, so that's the news about Yana Research Station. Does anybody else have any announcements or news they want to share? Yes, Jürgen?
You and I both have trouble with names. I also have trouble remembering topics. I'm going to be checking this week about ordering astronomy calendars. I do that every year. And if you're interested in getting a calendar, in the past I've asked you to send me a check. But I'm just going to, if you want calendars, some number of them, let me know. And my email is always in Lawrence's monthly announcements. In the past, they cost $10. I don't see any reason why they won't cost 10 again. About a third of that actually is a contribution to the club. It's a bit of a fundraiser. So I hope if Astronomy Magazine is still publishing them, and we can get them the way I hope we can, I will have them available in November.
Thank you very much, Jürgen. All right. Hey, is there anybody who is visiting us tonight who has never attended a Madison Astronomical Society meeting before? Would you care to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Paul Carrica, friend of Rick's.
Hi, Paul. It's great to meet you. Have you been familiar? Have you been an astronomy enthusiast in the past, or you just kind of
Since high school.
since high school? It's great to see you here. Pardon me, your name, Patrick?
Paul.
Paul. Great to meet you, Paul. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll be right with you. Hi, everyone. Introduce yourselves to what's your name?
Don Waller, returning to astronomy from 60 years ago or so.
Good on you,
I'm
hey.
retired.
It's great to meet you. Did you sign our attendance sheet? It'd be great to have you.
You'll miss it.
Great to meet you. Yeah, I was trying to remember people's names. I'll be right with you.
I'm Jay Kaiser. I am pretty new to astronomy. Started with a pair of binoculars, upgraded to a small reflector telescope, and I'm trying to broaden my horizons for the things I can see. So really excited to be attending tonight.
It's great to meet you. Thanks for joining us.
We got one more in the back.
Got one more? Oh, yeah. Thanks for reminding me.
I think this gentleman may be new too. I saw his hand shoot up briefly.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're busted. What's your name?
Stan Held. Yeah, I'm more or less Rick's sidekick. I worked with him
Or me, his.
one of the two. I worked with him last year at the Moon Terrace, and I've been to Ghana once too, so I'm sort of being sucked in to
Into the black hole.
so, yeah, that's true. So
I saw you today. Oh, it's great to meet you, Stan. And two more, yeah.
I'm David Glazer. This is my wife, Jessie.
Hi.
We're both retired, and we have time now to get into the astronomy hobby.
See?
Something I've been interested in since I was a little boy, and my father gave me a 2-inch refractor for a birthday present. And it's not my first telescope. Now I'm on my 4th telescope. And we've been meaning to come out here to get involved in the astronomy club and maybe get advice and assistance in figuring out how we might best build an observatory on our rural property, which is between Deerfield and Cottage Grove.
Well, how many is that? I think if you join our Facebook group, I think one of our members recently did build a fairly good-looking observatory. So, and then we're also chatting along more with the Milwaukee Club. So, yeah, there might be a way for us to get you some advice or some plans or anything, you know, for those of us in the club who have the land available and would like to build an observatory.
And those of us who are envious.
Those of us that don't have land we can build observatories on. We have Yana Research Station, and when people show up for star parties, it's a great time to come out and see all the different types of equipment there are and get advice and things and figure out what you want to do. So yes, great meeting you both. Thanks to you so much for showing up tonight.
Where is that research station?
The Yana Research Station is in northern Greene County, just a bit south of you've got Oregon, the city of Oregon there, and then south of there you got Brooklyn, and then further south of there a little bit we have some old farmland that was donated by the Yana family to Madison Astronomical Society in the early 1980s. That's been our dark sky observing site ever since.
It's about 35 minutes from right here.
Yeah, it's about 35 minutes from UW Space Place.
We're 25 minutes away, I drive.
15 the way I drive.
Well, I'm guessing it's a little bit after 8:30. I'm glad I
It's
remember
about
on
a half
my
hour.
clipboard it is. So I will go ahead and introduce tonight's guest speaker.
LEDs on them.
Tonight's presentation is called Increasing Vision, and it's presented by our own Madison Astronomical Society member, Rick Wayne. And just to tell you about a little bit about Rick Wayne, according to his biography, he's a husband, a dad, a software engineer for UW Soils, where he writes agronomic decision support software. Motto, sweet bog, where do I put these tons of cow poop? He's an outdoor emergency care instructor, for those of you who enjoy snow skiing and have ever wondered who it is that helps you when you parallel and when you should have snowplowed. That's an outdoor emergency care instructor, and he runs the regional instructor development program for the ski patrol. I got ahead of myself, and holds national appointment number 11910. His lifelong interest in photography led to his education, although not to his employment, as a photojournalist. He sort of toppled into deep sky astrophotography on the way to something else, but as a result, here he is tonight to give you a little talk called Increasing Vision, which I do believe is about astrophotography.
I sure hope so.
May I present to you Rick Wayne. Thanks for being here.
Does that work, Barry? Okay, cool. Most of the people in the room are going to get references like, I'm Rick Wayne and you're not. But, you know, I work with 20-year-olds at UW, so all my jokes are completely lost on them. I'm sorry. Before we get started here, I need to make a little personal note, a little disclaimer. The bit about madness, mental illness, not a joke. I have friends, family who struggle with it, including the guy I see in the mirror every day. It's not funny. There are friends and family who cannot be with us tonight because they lost their struggle with it. On the other hand, if they were here, they would say, oh yeah, Rick, totally use that idea to mock yourself. That's cool. So that's what I'm doing. I am talking to my navel a little bit more than I should, so is that coming through? All right, cool. Alrighty. The title of this talk is Increasing Vision, which comes out of the Andromeda strain, another old reference. This is actually the frontispiece of the Google Books version of the Andromeda strain. But that's not the whole quote, actually. Yeah, that's how it goes. You want to see better, it's going to cost you. That's just how it works in microbiology and astronomy. I started out, well, it probably goes back to when I was in middle school, actually. I was in Toledo, Ohio. My mom worked for the physics and astronomy department, and we had an next door neighbor who was a retired engineer and an amateur astronomer and an astrophotographer. He did his work on Fuji Color 100, if you can believe that. Film astrophotography. And these nuts got me kind of hooked at it. The Ritter Observatory is still there. They have a 1-meter Ritchie-Chrétien telescope, which is a beautiful, beautiful instrument. I don't know, does anybody remember what the big astronomical event was, like 1972, 1973? The big comet that was going to make everything. Kohoutek, yes! Remember how it turned out? You needed a 1-meter Ritchie-Chrétien to see the darn thing. So, yeah, I did get my look through the Ritchie-Chrétien at Kohoutek, and that kind of fired me up too. I should probably say, when John asked me to do this talk, First, I was really flattered, and then I thought, ooh, talk about me. I'll twist my arm. Janet's laughing there. The other thing was, he asked me if I had any problems with public speaking. Okay, little work story here. My very first job, public speaking, I was at a conference out on the West Coast. Big conference, expensive conference. I had a cool technology I was going to talk about, but I was terrified that something technical would go wrong. So the very first thing I did when I came in was plug my computer into the projector, and everybody who filtered into this scarily huge room could see everything I did from that point on, which was try to open my presentation. File corrupt, wouldn't open. Oh, I have a backup copy, which is gone. Oh, I've got a CD with a backup copy. It's right here in my empty CD envelope. Well, no matter, I have an overhead projector, and I printed it all out on transparencies, and besides that, I printed it out on paper. So long as we have lights, we can do this thing. And I went to get those out. They're in the bag that's in my hotel room. It's 2 minutes to go time. The people in the room have paid collectively something like $150,000, $200,000 to be at this conference altogether, and they're all looking at me. It's like one of those where this has got to be a nightmare, right? This can't really be real? No, it was really real. I found the CD, it was in the drive of my computer. I made a copy of it on my hard drive, and remember, everything I did, everybody could see. So they're all kind of nudging and laughing at this point. And I made a copy of it called This Might Even Work. And I double-clicked it, and it got a big laugh there. And I double-clicked it, and it came open, and I went from terrified to absolutely on top of the world. I leaped up on the stage, doing the Rocky Balboa thing, like literally, feeling strong now. All the people are sitting back and they're saying, okay, we'll just do the talk here. I won't promise that I'm any good at public speaking, but after that, I'm never going to be scared of it. Never again. That for sure. So my photography ethic is largely putting a frame around things I see in front of me rather than constructing art, constructing photographs. Ironically, this image is one that I conceived and did with a time exposure. This is just Christmas tree lights, but I kind of liked it. But mostly what I did was just kind of wander around with a camera and go, oh, that's cool. That matches pretty well with astrophotography because you can't really pose nebulas and ask them to turn their head a little bit, catch the light better. You can't change the lighting. So it fits pretty well. Just things like nubbins on a curb cutout, construction equipment. This is ice on Lake Mendota that I liked because it looked kind of cosmic. My photojournalism background, I did a little bit of that during the protests in 2010. A little bit of wildlife stuff. These two images were taken within a couple hundred meters of my office at UW Soil Science. This one, not so much. Did some portraiture. You might recognize some of those faces, though not that one. He's not here tonight. And some landscapes. Everybody's landscapes, right? This is Bright Angel Canyon out near the Grand Canyon. And this is the Smoky Mountains National Park. This is Prismatic Springs in Yellowstone National Park. When you're out there taking landscape shots, you kind of get to doing sunsets too, right? And that's when it started to kind of click to me that hey, there's Venus, there's Jupiter, there's stuff in the sky. I could be photographing that. And I saw some Milky Way images, and I kind of got psyched by that, and I wanted to start doing it. So from landscape stuff, I kind of moved into doing Milky Way. So I got out my mighty Pentax, and you can see the Milky Way in this image. I could say that for it. This is kind of, I'm going to refer to this image later as kind of a how not to, but That's my first one. Getting a little better. See some detail in the dust lanes and nebulosity. Color is for nothing, but the addition of the fishing boat and the dock lights kind of, you know, I couldn't be an astronomer, so I guess I'd be sort of a landscape photographer there. Same lake, Yellowstone Lake State Park. Getting a little better now. Better definition in the dust lanes. Some color, getting better at it. Little stars reflecting in the water. It's coming along. And we got up to the boundary waters in 2015. Yes, I put a DSLR and lenses and a tripod and lugged it on all the portages and all the paddles in the boundary waters. So I could do a few things like this. And this has got it going on. The colors are pretty whack, but you know, the stars are pretty pinpoint. There's good detail there. But it's not just the Milky Way. When you do landscape astrophotography, you can do things like this. This was at Blue Mountain State Park. That stuff is me with a red headlamp on. I was actually going to do some deep sky stuff with my telescope, and we'll see that later. But this is just a DSLR on a tripod, taking a sequence of 30-second images over and over and over. Probably about, I'd say that's roughly 15 degrees. So that's probably about an hour's worth of exposures there. But since there were stars on top too, it looks like circles. So I was pretty chuffed about that one. Again, dark skies really help out a lot. This is up in Gordon, Wisconsin. This is the one I was talking to Carol about, but it's probably going to drive her nuts because none of these lines are vertical. None of these angles are right angles. I had to do unspeakable things in Photoshop to get the distortions undistorted for this. That is not Photoshop. Honest to God, that meteor was really there, I promise. Once I got working with Milky Way stuff, then there were other targets out there, and I kind of wanted to get into those too, like those nebulae that everybody's looking at. So I set my mighty Pentax up with my huge 210 millimeter zoom lens and cracked off a 16-second exposure, about which the best you can say is, that is in fact the Orion Nebula, honest. But further than that, you can't go a lot. Mr. Finn might recognize this one. This is the same lens, same camera, piggybacked on the back of his Celestron C8 telescope with a clock drive on an equatorial mount, one of those big forks with the wedges. And during however long this exposure was, he sat there looking through the eyepiece with the motion control paddle in his hand, and he was auto-guiding it, or manually guiding it, because he had a crosshair that he could look at the stars with. So, you know, it's kind of a galaxy, but obviously, I want it more. I owe a lot to the Finn, actually. He kind of got me started on those Yellowstone Lake pictures. He was there for most of them. He also loaned me his Ioptron Sky Tracker, which looks like a big paperback book, but it's got a clock drive in it, and a tripod mount, and a polar scope. And the idea is you align the motor with the Earth's axis of rotation, and then you put your camera on a ball joint so you can point it anywhere in the sky, and then it compensates for sidereal motion so you can take time exposures. If things work right.
They're invading.
Yeah, this is trying to be the Horsehead Nebula. That's the Flame Nebula there.
Alnitak.
That's Alnitak, the bane of the Horsehead. Yeah, the bane of Horsehead Nebula photographers. The batteries died partway. Excuse me. Partway through this exposure, and I just loved the effect it made. It just kind of like hit warp speed. And the really cool thing is, you can't see any of that motion because this was dim enough that it just smears out. Just the stars made the effect. So I kind of like that one. And then my crowning achievement with that rig, with almost my crowning achievement with that rig, working at the Horsehead, this was with a 500 millimeter mirror lens and my DSLR and Paul's Ioptron Sky Tracker. I finally got one that was sort of the Horsehead. I can't believe how proud I was of this when I took it. But at the time, man, I was well chuffed indeed. But I did get some things that were not utterly terrible with that rig. Janet knows that every time I see this image, I kind of go, because the stars, many of them look like little arrowheads, and there are just so many things wrong with it. She wanted an Andromeda for the wall, so she sent me out to shoot a new one, because she knew I'd just whine if we put this one on the wall. So if you're working with a tracker, some of the challenges are working with that ball head and trying to point the camera at the target. Unless you're working with a wide-angle lens, it's hugely frustrating. You have to point and clamp, and that makes it move a little. You shoot a picture, nope, that's not it. Move, just keep that up until you go wacko. One of the things that I found that worked pretty well was to get a cheap red dot sight, like a gun sight, and mount that in the camera's flash chute, and then I could at least eyeball it and kind of get where I wanted to be. Trackers can't take much weight, and they're not really good for long focal lengths, and of course I wanted increasing vision, so I was rapidly getting past what a tracker could deliver for me. Polar alignment with a tracker is also a bit of a challenge because you've got that little polar scope, and if you're good, I don't mean to denigrate polar scopes, because if you know what you're doing, you can get a super good alignment with one of those. I am not that guy. I could never get a good alignment with a polar scope. So, madness begins to descend. I decided I needed to have an equatorial mount and a refractor. There I am at Blue Mountain State Park. Might be the same night as the night of the Star Trails there. This is an Ioptron SEM 25P mount. It's light, it's easily portable, it tracks pretty well, especially, do we have anyone who doesn't know much about astrophotography here, or am I talking to a room full of experts? Okay, someone's brave enough to say it. Okay, all right. So, you know, if I'm explaining stuff like Carol has probably gone to sleep by now, but this actually does have a polar scope, but it also has motors in it that will do a go-to. So if you have it set up right, you can say, find me Andromeda, and it will go like a good little robot and point you right at that. We'll talk more about the kind of telescope you need to do deep sky. That is a 70 millimeter objective. I've got bigger camera lenses. It's a jewel. It's a stellar view. It's really expensive. I overbought, and I'm deeply in love with it, but it's tiny. But that suffices. And as you can see, you can get some reasonable results out of a little rig like that. Here we go. What do I owe to the Finn? He drove me all the way down to Big Bend National Park in Texas, which has the darkest skies in the lower 48, so we can get this shot. Those of you who know about astrophotography know that integration time is the big thing. This is maybe an hour or an hour and a half at most, because the weather just wasn't letting us get long integration times. That's just how it worked. But it's so dark there, it's that you could get results like this off of that. In fact, it was really hard to navigate the night sky. Those of you who have been to truly dark sites know you can't even find Polaris because they're all over the sky. This was shot from Blue Mountain, same rig. This is the M42, the Great Nebula in Orion, and the Running Man Nebula. And I think I'll accept that one too. This is probably about 5 hours of integration time, but it was taken in a much brighter site. Blue Mountain is probably Bortle 5-ish. little, maybe darker than Yana, but maybe not. So yeah, the ioptron days were not without problems. You'll notice that these are all identical connectors. They're RJ11, like you do with a phone cord. These labels show up really good in this lighting, but in the dark, you probably see where I'm going with this, right? I had to send a really sad email to ioptron, so I got to know the Tech 1, John at ioptron, and Tech 2, Kevin at ioptron.
I know them too.
Saying, I plugged my mount in and I turned it on and I turned around my headlamp and there was smoke going down. They said, send it in, we'll fix it. So the next step for me, more, deeper, increasing vision. I wanted a camera that could get really good response with sulfur and hydrogen alpha emission lines. Hydrogen, as you know, is the most abundant element in the universe. And so anywhere there is energy to ionize hydrogen, you've got glowing red stuff out there. As it happens, most terrestrial cameras don't respond all that well because they have an infrared cutoff filter that cuts off some of that. So I wanted me that hydrogen. So that year, Janet's mom is also a big contributor to my astrophotography journey because every year she has all this money she doesn't know what to do with and doesn't want taxes to, so she sends money to all the grandkids and all the kids. And so this was the 2018 Grandma Lynn gift. This is an ASI 183 monochrome camera. Nice and sensitive to hydrogen alpha, no RGB filter, so you have to put filters in front of it if you want to do colors. And after I blew my wad on the camera, I could only afford one filter, which is a hydrogen alpha filter. I figured, well, at least then I could image in brighter locations. And as it turned out, I could. This is from my backyard, or actually my front yard in Madison, between the streetlights. This was the first narrowband image I ever did.
Bree, how long ago was that?
2018, I think.
Were one-shot colors not very popular back then? You went straight to mono?
They were around, but the cool kids didn't use them. Yeah. Well, there were a couple of reasons. I wanted to, when I started doing RGB, I wanted to have a luminance channel to build up contrast and detail more quickly. And at the time, there weren't really good tri-band, narrowband filters. So yeah, single filters was the way to go. Sorry, I don't mean to smack my tummy there.
Is this the 70mm still?
Yes, yep. That's the stellar view with the 183, and just the HA filter screwed into the middle of it. This is the Elephant's Trunk Nebula. With color, this is really spectacular, but I actually kind of like it. With the monochrome, you see a lot of detail that you might miss otherwise.
Photojournalism background.
Right, yeah. It ain't real if it ain't black and white, right? So I did eventually get another filter, and so oh boy, big like that kind of makes me go, oh, walking noise. I wasn't dithering, so there's noise, and oh well, never mind. Nobody knows but me. This was shot under a streetlight in a dog park near my house, for crying out loud. This was also shot with a couple of other filters. By then, I acquired a filter wheel. This is the East Vale Nebula, and the blue is oxygen, the green, I think that might be sulfur, but that may be Photoshop. But the red is definitely hydrogen. I'm honest with that for sure. And then once I did have all three channels, I was able to get a little bit better definition. As you can see from the stars here, my little 725p was doing the job, but I was really pushing it by now. Because I had the Astro camera on there, I had the filter wheel on there, I had, we'll talk about guide scopes and guide cameras on there. I was over the recommended limit for that mount. And so it was this matter of getting it balanced just right for one side, and then I had to get the other weights just so that the 3D balancing, it was just a mess. And there was the whole, I had new dance that I had to do to get it to work. But when it worked, by God, it delivered sharp images. Picked up some more filters, so I was finally able to do Janet's Andromeda. This is several hours of luminance. I don't know if you're unfamiliar, but the human eye picks up detail through differences in luminance, not differences in color. So if you spend a lot of time acquiring luminance data, your image will look very detailed. Your color data can be at lower resolution or noisier. It just sort of splashes colors on the cool details that the luminance gives you. This was shot with the 70 millimeter, but I had to do a mosaic because it's a little too, I couldn't quite get it all in with the 183 has a really tiny sensor, which is a whole story in itself because I was trying to get the same amount of red and the same amount of green and the same amount of blue, and I was doing that over multiple nights and things would break. So as far as I'm concerned, Andromeda really is red like that. I'm not interested in talking about it. A lightweight mountain like that, again, there are some challenges with it. They're economical. You don't have to spend an arm and a leg to pick one up, and they're fairly lightweight. You can take one out, remote imaging with you without breaking your back. But in order to achieve those targets, the tolerances aren't as good as in higher end mounts. So it's really hard to make one perform to get to those tiny little tolerances, little bitty stars. My 725p, its rated imaging weight was 12 pounds. I was running at 17, which the poor thing was way stop. And it just was getting a little bit too much for that mount. I wanted to do more things. So I boarded the train. I bought a 770, which, as the name implies, has almost triple the weight capacity, is much more tightly machined. And I had that thing about cables being a drag. Note that all the forested cables plug in down here, but then they come out here, so the cables aren't flopping around in the breeze. That's gold! Gold, I tell you. That's actually my backyard with the neighbor's chicken coop right there. It's when I'm out in Blue Mound or Yana, I'm serenaded by coyotes, and when I'm in Madison, I'm serenaded by chickens. So it all kind of works out. So I started getting some pretty decent results out of that. This is the Markarian's chain group of galaxies, and if you start looking, that's a galaxy, and that's a galaxy, and that's a galaxy, and my God, it's full of galaxies. Just, there are hundreds of them in this image. But one thing that I know is that I'm getting little pinpoint stars out of this guy. I didn't mention cobbling together an autofocus rig for my stellar view, but I did that too. That helped out. Also at the 770, this is a shot of the Antares Nebula and the Rho Ophiuchi Nebula. This is the Milky Way down here. You'll see in a different image. This is actually just with a 50 millimeter lens on my Pentax slapped on top of that huge mount. And if you look, notice where the counterweight is there? With this little scope on there, that I can't put it any higher on the shaft. It actually isn't balanced. It's still counterweight heavy, but if I put it higher, then the mount couldn't turn. So I was just kind of stuck there. You can imagine what it was with it just a DSLR with a 50 millimeter lens on top. It's a good thing those motors are big.
I was wondering, is your camera modified or is it a stock commercial one?
Stock. Never been touched. Beat to death. Gravity, man. I know we need to have gravity to see targets out there, but so this image, well, that image was at the cost of that nice camera. Yep, right to the pavement. Remember that image? Yeah, my beautiful little SD70. Twice from the saddle to the pavement. Fortunately, this guy took some bizarre dings and I sort of had to bolt things weirdly, but it's working great to this day. And for whatever reason, the astronomy gods decreed that my abuse of that stellar view was forgiven. And that thing is still performing exquisitely today. I don't deserve it, but that's what I got. When I was out there's the Rho Ophiuchi image, and you can see where that comes from in the Milky Way. Sorry, I should have played with the colors more on that. That's kind of garish, but I just wanted to show where the... And this was a gorgeous night. Newport State Park is an international dark sky park. And if I had all night, I would tell you the whole story of how I met the ranger that made it an IDAS dark sky park, just completely at random. And I was going on and on and on about this park ranger who had invited me to the park and invited me to stay there as long as I wanted, so long as I had my license plate number. She was just a gem. I owe so much to her. And she said, she's the barista I'm talking to. That would be me. That's my other job. So I was delighted she got to hear that. So I'm out at Newport on the beach. It's just a beautiful night. I'm just reveling in the stuff that's coming off this camera on the 770, and I've got my other Pentax DSLR just kind of wadded up on a coat. I didn't even have a tripod for it, but I was just sequencing on it, sitting back in my chair, watching the stars wheel overhead, and they're really wheeling that. Yeah, the camp chair in the sand. It wouldn't have been so bad, except I got the tripod on the way down, so I had to restart the whole, no damage, but I had to restart the whole polar alignment deal. But then, I was having so much fun, and I was getting such good stuff, that I stayed there until it got light. And by then I've been doing it for a couple of nights, and I was just kind of staggering. And I decided, no, I'll pile everything on the little collapsible hand truck. And I'll take it back to the car in one trip. No, that did not work. My 770 this time. Onto the paved path. And I noticed that it didn't guide nearly as well after that incident as it had before. So I emailed John at Aptron, and he said, I remember you. So he fixed it up again. Well, he hadn't seen that mount before, and it's better than ever. I get terrific guiding numbers on it now. And I'm very careful. This, going back to my youth, now I've got a Ritchie Chrétien telescope, which is, if you're not familiar, is a particular kind of optical formulation that is really good for deep space stuff. The Palomar telescope is a Ritchie Chrétien. The Hubble is a Ritchie Chrétien. My telescope is a Ritchie Chrétien. It's a little smaller than those, but you know, I'm going. You'll notice that with the RC on, I get to move the counterweight down to more like a... This, by the way, did you shoot this, Carol? Yeah. Thank you for that. This is one of my favorite pictures of me.
I'm glad I took a second one.
Yeah. This was at the Donald Park Star Party. And boy, talk about young people. I got waylaid by some 10-year-old girl who like walked up to me and said, "So is it nebulas or nebulae? And I said, I've always liked nebulae. And she said, good. And then she had more
She
questions.
made her way around to everybody.
Yes, I'm not surprised. She was wonderful. So one of the reasons I wanted a longer scope is, as you're probably aware, during part of the year, the night side of the Earth is pointing at the rest of the galaxy. So we have all these tasty nebula and star clusters and stuff close to us, nice and big, easy to image. When we're facing out into the deeps, like in springtime, that's galaxy season. And there are big galaxies, but there are a lot of teeny ones. So I wanted to try my hand at getting some of those. Hence the RC, which, yeah, this is like the first image that's really an image that I got off of it. And, oh yeah, so many things with this image. Like you could see these are little donuts rather than dots. So I didn't have the focus right. Man, that's M106. That's a teeny thing. The other thing about working at this kind of focal length is that the seeing, the atmospheric turbulence, is taking up a large part of your image here. They say that if your seeing is, say, 2 arc seconds, which I think it is around here, 2, 2.5, 3, somewhere in there. Anybody ever measure that? No? That's what I kind of extrapolate based on my own data. So your image scale should be about half your seeing. So an ideal image scale, the number of arc seconds that 1 pixel represents in your image should be 1 second around here. With the 183 camera and the RC, I'm talking 0.3. So I am oversampled, as we say. So it brings up every tiny little problem. But I still love it. But an arc second, by the way, if you hold up a dime 2 kilometers away, that's an arc second. My scope is trying to deal with stuff that's a third of that angular size. It wasn't all out of focus though. I managed to get M51 reasonably well. Not too many Photoshop crimes involved in getting that. Still could be a little sharper, but I'm getting the dust lanes there. Needle Galaxy did okay. One of the nice things, I didn't used to like it, but now that I have one, I like the diffraction vanes on bright stars from an RC. One of the reasons I like it is I can look to see, yeah, that was actually in focus. One of my earlier images, you could tell that those things were doubled, and so that it wasn't in focus, but yeah, that's a quick check. And, okay, you should never apologize when you're doing a presentation. I am fully aware that the technical quality on this is not what it should be. You can see the checkerboard banding in here and noise and all that. But look at that. This was like 45 minutes of integration time, which was all I had between rainstorms. But I did catch the supernova before it went away. M101, the Pinwheel Galaxy.
That was in May?
I think so?
Yes.
Yeah. And I still like to do nebula, but now I can do little ones. Oh, this is the image, yeah. If you look at this one, see how the diffraction spikes are doubled? Oh, bad Rick. I don't have an autofocuser for that scope. That's a current project. This is probably the one I'm proudest of out of that scope so far. This is M27, which is the...
Dumbbell?
Thank you, the dumbbell nebula. I guess I can't remember it because it never looks like a dumbbell to me. But, you know, whatever. This is in narrowband, so I like to do hydrogen red. Heck with you, Hubble. I don't like your palette. Hydrogen is red, oxygen is blue, and greener tones are sulfur. In addition to just doing regular old deep sky stuff, if you have the gear, and even if you don't have as much gear as I have gone out and gotten, you can do all kinds of fun things with astrophotography, even with pretty basic equipment. This is in Tecumseh, Nebraska in 2017 for the Great American Eclipse. Those are my children And that woman you might not recognize without the hat, but she's in the audience tonight. We did actually get a picture of the eclipse too. While I know they love me because they turned around to pose for the picture away from the eclipse. This is just with a 500 millimeter mirror lens on a tripod on a DSLR with a solar filter over it, so I didn't blow my camera up. But it's not APOD, but prominences, corona. Likewise, lunar eclipses, they're a little more challenging because not as bright, so you have to expose for longer. And since this wasn't on a tracking mount, you can see the stars are little dashes there. Little bit of blurring in the moon. Still, I have this picture on my wall. I'm not ashamed of it. Been getting into some planetary stuff, which I'm just starting out, so don't judge, please. But this is Jupiter on a smaller screen. This looks great, let me tell you. I shot this with the 12-inch RC in the Doc Greiner Research Observatory at Yana. Likewise, Saturn. The trouble with doing this planetary stuff is you have to do tiny little images. You can't use a lot of resolution because you have to shoot video really fast. And so you wind up with artifacts like that. So it's sad. But it's Saturn! Comets, this comet Neowise, this is with the stellar view, and I think that's with the K5, a regular DSLR. See the ion in the dust tail. And
Do you have sky glow in there too? Neowise?
Or crappy processing, one of the two. Yeah, there might be some noise in there. I believe we'll find out. So, okay, that's kind of my journey. If you're interested in this stuff, here are some tips for getting started. If you want to go the same route I did, Milky Way. Okay, you got to buy one of these. No, you don't. You absolutely don't want to buy one of those. What you need is, you need a camera, you need to focus it, you need some way to trigger it, you need some way to keep it from wobbling around, and you have to process the images. That's it. Camera can be really any modern digital camera. It's good to have a lens that's fairly fast. Zooms are not as good as prime lenses, fixed focal length lenses. What you got is a zoom. Go out and shoot with a zoom. Go ahead. It'll be fine. You don't have to shoot super duper long exposures, especially, we're going to talk about stacking a little bit. You don't have to shoot super long exposures, but you need to get like into the 30-second range. If you can do sequencing on your camera and you can stack the images, that's a plus. If you can use the raw image format instead of the JPEG. JPEG is miraculous compression, but for astrophotography, it is the work of... It's bad, let me tell you. And absolutely, a cell phone will work for this stuff. You're kind of starting from behind the goal line with one, but it'll work. Focusing, always a challenge. If you have a regular camera and you point it at the night sky and you say autofocus, it'll say, We usually use the rear screen on DSLRs and point and shoots, magnify it as much as we can, and then tweak it a little bit at a time. And if you're using an actual physical knob to do that focusing, have some painter's tape that you can stick on there so it doesn't drift off. You get images like that one I showed you with the donuts for stars. Yeah, after several hours out in the dark shooting, and you get that back. That's not fun.
That's why I quit.
Yeah. Cell phones are probably going to be fine. They have super great depth of field, and they're probably just going to default to infinity focus anyway, so that'll be okay. Pavel Batinov. If you haven't heard of the amateur Russian astronomer, Pavel Batinov, I am here to pay him credit and due. This little grating over the camera lens there is magic. Let me show you if I can. Can I do it there? Yes. So as you focus, that diffraction pattern forms little spikes. And then it comes way out of focus and looks just like the grate again. When it goes through, when those spikes line up right in the center of the V, you are in perfect focus. That will give you much better focusing than you can do by eye. Still not as good as an astronomical autofocuser, as I found to my, I guess, gratification when mine started to work finally. Triggering the camera, obviously you don't want to jiggle it, so the stars and Milky Way are all jiggly. So some kind of remote trigger is good. You can use a countdown timer or use the hat trick, which is just, you set up the camera, you put something over the lens, you start the image, you take it away, the image completes. The hat trick. Okay. Again, if you can do sequencing for stacking, which we'll talk about, that's great. If you have computer control of your camera, now the world is your oyster and you can do all kinds of cool things. Doing exposure. These are pretty dim objects, the Milky Way. What?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. There's a low signal to noise ratio. You can get a single exposure to work, but when you enhance the contrast on it, remember that very first image I showed you with the bizarre blue and the green and the, remember how that looked? Yeah, you don't want that. So if you overstretch an image, if you enhance the contrast more than it can handle, that's what you get. I guess I won't go into how that works because you all have families you'd like to get back to someday. Holding the camera, a tripod, easy enough. But you know, you can stick the sucker on a beanbag. Works just as well. Processing, stretching is, as I said, the process of taking a low contrast image where you can't really see the detail very much in the nebulosity, and then you apply stretching to it, and yeah, magic, right? Well, all it did, if you look at the, check that histogram, see how there's a big peak at the left there and then it tails off? What the software did was it just kind of moved everything on over to the brighter side, but this software is smart enough to do that selectively, so it's not blowing the stars out, for example, and it's not making the background too bright. So that's stretching. You can do it in specialized Astro software, you can do it in Photoshop or the GIMP. It's just, you mess with the tonal response curve and it does magic for you. Stacking. Okay. Make this really quick. Basically, it's the idea of taking a bunch of measurements of something and averaging them to get close to the true result. The software does this for every pixel on your picture. Where it comes into play is if various random factors displace the true values of adjacent pixels, and then you enhance that contrast, they get even further and further out of whack than they should be, and it starts to become really visible. So by averaging it, you take those wackadoodle values, bring them closer to what the true value is. We can't know that. We can approach it by averaging. And then you get smoother, nicer pictures. Software, these are some of the packages I know about. I've used Photoshop a fair bit. Sequator and Starry Landscape Stacker have built-in compensation for the problem of if you're stacking multiple images, but the Earth is rotating, then the ground is going to be in a different position in each of those images, and so it's going to be smeared out in the final stack. These two have that built in, so you don't have to play with it. The deep sky stacking or processing stuff that I'm going to talk about in a minute, of course, can do this standing on its head. Best resource I can recommend for anybody that wants to do Milky Way is lonelyspec.com. They have a great bunch of tutorials. They have what camera and lens to use, what software, how to take the pictures, how to process them. It's great. It's how I got started. I'm going to dive past planetary here. I don't know all that much about it, and it is getting kind of late. So they're bright, they're tiny. What you need to do is have a long scope and take video, basically. So this is where those big, people who start in astronomy always have aperture fever, and they get big scopes, like a big celestron. This is where one of those really comes into play. A big, slow, high magnification scope is great. You shoot video. You can only, for Jupiter and Saturn, they rotate so fast, you can only shoot about 2 minutes at a time before the details have moved. And there are techniques to compensate for that, but that's way past. Planetary software, usually people do it with a computer. This is the standard. Fire capture, auto stackered, the exclamation point is part of the name, is great, and I use it. And then this is one that I'm trying to work with that have yet to even come close to mastering, which does wavelet voodoo with your image. And I don't know if it actually does deconvolution, but it takes the blurry bits and makes them sharper. And if you don't do that, you wind up with stuff that's even way blurrier than those images of Jupiter and Saturn I showed you.
Works great on the moon. Crazy.
Yeah, right. My primary resource, now that I've started to do a little planetary stuff, is on cloudy nights. Yes, my mouth is wearing out at long last, eh, Janet? Major and minor planetary imaging forum. They have a frequently asked questions list. It's awesome. Go read it. I can't do any better than that. Deep sky is where I live, so I'm going to whiz through that pretty quickly for you. Dim objects, so signal to noise ratio is what rules everything. You have to do long exposures. You have to do tracking. Can't use a beanbag, sorry. Processing is a huge part of deep sky imaging. The gear for it, a very modest telescope suffices, oddly enough. Even though you're imaging something that's very dim, you don't need a big, huge aperture. What you need is something with a good focal ratio. Again, f4 is what I work with that stellar view. Some people work at f2 with, trust me, they just work at f2. But the mount is super important for deep sky work. The better your mount, the longer your exposures can be, the better the signal to noise ratio it is, and the fewer exposures you have to deal with when you go to process it. Because that can be a long, long night. For wide field stuff, you can just use a tracker. Longer than about 200 millimeters focal length, you're talking an equatorial mount. Probably going to need auto guiding, which is its whole other topic, unless you have a short focal length or a really, really nice mount. Helps to find the target go-to in an equatorial mount is really helpful there. And if you have a computer-controlled rig, something called plate solving is just the nuts. Let me tell you, you say, find it, and it points, but it's not on, but it takes a picture and it says, oh, I'm off. And it points, and it takes another picture, and it keeps doing that till it's perfect. And then it says, hey boss, time to take pictures. I love plate solving. Gotta do stacking for this. Curiously, long exposures, single exposures, other than reducing the number of frames you have to process, super long exposures usually are not necessary. When I'm doing stars, for example, to put with those nebula, when I'm doing RGB work on the stars, I'm using 30-second exposures, but I'm doing a lot of them. So the total integration time is what's really important for deep sky work. Processing, like I said, there's way too much to go into. You can get started with something like Photoshop. You can do stacking in Photoshop, actually, but it's really better for like the last few tweaks of your image when you're getting done with it. There's something called Deep Sky Stacker. It's kind of old now. It's only on Windows, so I don't use it. Cyril is a free program. It's very powerful. It's a little harder to learn, but I would not, I've used it. I recommend it. It's not bad. Really what I love is a program called Astropixel Processor. It's about $130. You use it too, right, Carol? You see all the controls here and sliders. If you want to, if you have your frames and you load them up in this software, you can go to tab 6, integrate, and say, make it so, number 1, and it will just do it.
Its defaults are amazing.
Yeah. And if you want to, you can get in and tweak the I can't even remember, the location with a K, and there's all sorts of stuff in there. But you don't have to. And the lovely thing about it is that sequence of tabs kind of takes you through. If you want to do it manually or pseudo-manually, it'll just step you right through the steps and kind of teach you how the processing works as you go. The other one is PixInsight, which is famously hard to learn. It is extremely powerful. It has more features than any other processing software that I'm aware of. It's a little more expensive than APP. You get value for your dollar with PixInsight, but you will do an apprenticeship trying to learn it. I'll tell you that for free. Some resources for deep sky. This is another one of my old guy references. This is going back to The Elements of Style by Strunk and White. Get the little book, get the little book, get the little book. Get the Bracken book. This is an amazing, everything that I've said today is in that book, written better, organized better, with explanations, and he'll show you the math if you want. It's $50, yes. It's the best $50 you can spend in deep sky astro. That, hands down. No piece of gear I have is worth more than that.
That sounds much cheaper than music lessons or golf lessons.
Yeah, right.
$50, sign me up.
There are some great YouTube channels for deep sky. You can't imagine why I would like this guy, right?
I love him. He's my favorite.
Yeah, he is wonderful. And he's also smart and well organized and does really good presentations.
And images from a Bortle 9 in downtown Tokyo.
Right. Yeah. This boy is serious. He's like doing that and getting images out of it. Dylan O'Donnell, star stuff. He's pretty good. He's pretty funny. He's sometimes kind of controversial, but that's okay. I've seen him set fire to an auto-guiding cable and gone, yep, that was the right thing to do. Astro Stace, I haven't been following her lately. She has a great set of tutorials, and she does like unboxing videos on gear and various kinds of how-tos. And then everybody seems to love Astro Backyard, who covers the whole map. He does how-tos, he does how-tos and reviews of gear and how to use gear, all the rest of it. So those are some fairly decent ways to get started looking at this stuff. I have a friend in the ski patrol who teaches. He's also an instructor trainer like me. And he ends every lesson with this question. Questions, comments, snide remarks? I'm not going to make you fill out evaluation forms though. If you have questions, please feel free to email me. You can call me on the phone, but you may have noticed that I kind of like to talk, so at your own risk. And of course, this video will be on our YouTube, the MAS channel's YouTube site. And I'll try to put the slide deck up someplace where people can get it for the resources. We can do that, right? We'll try. I'm not hearing anything from the back of the room, so maybe my mouth is writing checks my Astro Society can't cash here. All right, that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. Do we have any questions for Rick?
I want to know what Rick is going to buy next.
Yeah, I was gonna say Christmas is coming.
Oh, I was going to say, well, ask Janet, because it's got to go by her. I've got my eye on a 130 millimeter APO, kind of in the sweet spot between the 336 millimeters and the way too long 1625. 910 millimeters and a refractor. The thing about a Ritchie Chrétien is it's kind of like an English car. Terrific performance if you can get it running. So collimating the thing and you sneeze at it and it doesn't like that, so it's going to give you wonky stars. So it would be kind of nice to work with a longer scope that I didn't have to mess with as much too.
I guess if you like the Ritchie Chrétien thing, but you're sick of collimating it, but you have lots of money to spend, you can get a Dahl Kirkham.
Oh, yes. Yes, clearly. But I mentioned Janet is going to be asking about the...
Is that Pentax K5 that you showed, is that yours?
That was off of DP Reviews. I've actually got the K5 2S, which is the next gen of the K5, and it doesn't have a moire filter over the sensor. And I find that that's really nice for astrophotography. Yeah, it's a 2012 DSLR, and I have beaten mine to within an inch of its life, and it just comes back for more. They are great cameras.
It's a very nice camera. Have you ever used, I haven't tried, have you ever used the Astro feature on it where it will track?
Yes!
I've never heard of a camera that does that, and I'm kind of wondering, should I even try it?
So, do you have a Pentax? Oh, yeah. In fact, I could loan you which one do you have?
Actually, I bought two old used ones, a K5 and a K3. They cost a few $100 a piece.
Okay, well, at least one of those, my old GPS would work. Oh, okay.
They both have it, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes, in fact, I am the proud author. I don't know if you know about calibrating the GPS units on those, but the Pentax cameras have in-body stabilization. So the sensor actuators, if you have smart enough software and the camera knows where it's pointing, can be used to compensate for sidereal motion. In 3 axes, it can do that X, Y, and rotate, and it can actually do a pretty good job at it. The trouble is you have to tell the camera which way it's pointing, so you have to calibrate it. And that involves taking the camera turned on, your DSLR, mind you, and turning it in all your axes.
It's like calibrating a phone.
Yeah.
It's worse than calibrating a phone. Because for one thing, it's $1,000. And for another, it's a lot heavier to hang on to. But in the Pentax forum, I am the proud author of the term, the chicken dance, to denote that particular activity. But the Pentax forum has some great deep sky images up to about 400 millimeter shot shot with the GPS. Absolutely, give it a try. It's so freeing. I mean, you think about that SEM 70, the mount head is 30 pounds, the counterweight is 20 pounds, there's the computer and all the gadgetry and the tripod. And if I was going to use my OGPS, I would need a tripod and my camera, and I'm done. That's all I need to do astro.
What kind of exposure length are you limited to?
The exposure length is,
Like 20 seconds?
it's determined, it's limited by the focal length you're using. So like for a 50 millimeter lens, I think you can do 3 to 5 minutes.
Whoa.
And for longer stuff, like a 300 millimeter lens would be, I don't know, 30 seconds. I think my 500 was 15 or something crazy.
Okay, that's
So,
impressive.
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
harvesting the pixels with a moving, in other words, it's the sensor's stationary?
No.
It's moving the sensor?
It's moving the sensor
Oh,
with the
wow.
shake actuators, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was some serious brain sweat that went into the software for this thing. But you know, they've got the hardware built right into the camera.
I was waiting for Carol to talk about dark frames.
About,
Dark frames.
oh, well, yeah. Take your calibration frames.
Calibration frames.
Right.
All of them.
Any other questions? Oh, here we go.
Yeah, no, I was just curious what your computer is, how old it is, and how much sleep you get while you're doing some of the stacking and other processing.
Ooh, okay. Well, those are kind of complex questions, but the scope side computer I use is a Raspberry Pi. It's running StellarMate OS, which is a $50 download from stellarmate.com, and it has a complete planetarium. It has more observatory control software than you or I will ever need. It's got stuff in there to control the dome and turn on and off the heaters, and just, it's an amazing piece of open source software.
Which version of Raspberry Pi is running it on?
I've got now a 4B with, I think, 8 gig. It's not running currently. I was talking about seeing the grass. I was out at Yana, and I couldn't figure out a way to attach the Pi to the big Richie Chrétien, the 12-inch. And so I found some electrical tape. I was like, don't tell Martin I taped this thing to the telescope, but I taped this thing to the telescope. And I was like, okay, here we go, and we'll get this booted up, and I heard crunch, and the Pi fell from. Gravity never sleeps, man. You gotta watch that stuff. Yeah, but I do the scope side stuff with a Pi. Most of my processing I do on this 2020 MacBook Pro. This is actually the university's computer. I use it for software development, so it's pretty high spec. I think it's 32 gig. The Andromeda image, doing all the mosaicing and all the stacking and integration for that, probably took about 15 hours or so to run. I was really worried because that thing got real hot while it was doing it, I can tell you that. But most of my stuff gets done 20 minutes less. And as for sleeping, yeah, I'd come home and I'd have the data and I had to see it right away. These days I'm much more likely to say, yeah, it's 3 in the morning and I have to get up and go to work. I'll process it tomorrow, thanks. So as far as acquiring the data, yeah, some of the dents in that couch at Yana definitely have my shape to them, because I get sequencing going and I go for a nap as fast as I can.
Do you have a planetary camera at all? Planetary camera?
No. I have my old guide camera, a 120MC that I could use, but it's so noisy. And really, if I just chimp down the resolution on my 183, I mean, it's mono, but I can get probably better performance out of that. I have thought about maybe thought about it, just thought about it.
Well, I would say you should try the 120.
Yeah.
I have one, and the nice thing with your planetary is the images are so short, the noise really isn't a problem.
True
So
that.
I would say you should try on that. My question though is, I noticed you do a thing that I do, and I think a lot of people who do astrophotography do, where you look at an image and you find everything wrong with it. Why do you think we do that?
So you can get better.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I really do, like I said, you know, I put the frame on something and then I want to make the best picture I can from it. And boy, you've got to be relentless about this stuff if you're gonna improve. And even, you know, I've never posted a lot of these pictures to cloudy nights because I couldn't stand they wouldn't even laugh. It'd be like, that's nice, kid. Here's $5,000. Buy yourself a real mount.
All right, any further questions? Well, thank you so much, Rick. That was a really great and fun presentation. And on behalf of our club, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. And in the future, when you ever see Rick at Yana Research Station, never hesitate to ask him or any of us any questions you might have or ask for advice. Because it's half the fun of astrophotography is learning how to troubleshoot.
Yes.
And figuring out tricks, every trick you need to know to get your equipment to work the best it can. So,
Like the bio said, pitfalls explored from the bottom.
all right. Well, thank you much, everyone. And yeah, I'll have to look at my notes here. I just want to wrap up this month's meeting of the Madison Astronomical Society, and we'll see you again on next meeting on Friday, November 10th, right back here at Space Place. Have a good night, everybody.